Do you desperately desire love and yet also feel terrified of intimacy when it finally shows up? Maybe you felt a powerful spark with someone, and then once the routines of everyday life set in, all of a sudden your amorous feelings go from hot to cold almost overnight, and you cannot figure out why all of a sudden you have no interest in your partner anymore. Or maybe you've had a habit of sabotaging your relationships, believing that deep down either you're no good for anybody or there must be something wrong with your partner if they want you. If so, you may be struggling with disorganized attachment, sometimes called fearful avoidance, anxious avoidance, or disordered attachment. And you are going to want to stick around for this video. In this video, we are going to explore a definition for disorganized attachment, the origins of disorganized attachment, characteristics of disorganized attachment in adulthood specifically, the impact on your dating life, and also how to heal disorganized attachment. By the end of this video, you will know the impact of trauma and dissociation on disorganized attachment, how and why you might be struggling in your relationships, your strengths as a disorganized, what I call spice of lifer, and what you bring to the relationship, and the unique challenges you will need to meet in order to heal. But before we get into it, if you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Briana MacWilliam, and I am a licensed and board-certified creative arts therapist with more than 15 years in the field, helping adults struggling with insecure attachment go from self-doubting to self-sovereign so they can attract the soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want. And I do this using a psycho-spiritual approach to creative arts interventions, which I call the MacWilliam method. The content on my YouTube channel is derived from my online courses, which you can learn more about through the link in the caption of this video. If you would like to learn more about your attachment style, you can take the 4-question quiz. If you like what you see in here and you want to learn more, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I put out videos once a week, and I wouldn't want you to miss out. Okay. So let's dive into our content for today. Let's start by talking about a definition for disorganized attachment. Disorganized attachment is one of 4 attachment styles. Attachment styles are unique blueprints for how you've learned to give and receive love in childhood, usually formed through interactions with your primary caregivers, to assume a developmental perspective. This blueprint is etched into your genetic makeup, your survival brain, and your nervous system. Over time, your blueprint evolves into certain attitudes, behaviors, and character traits which carry through our adult romantic relationships. Disorganized attachment distinguishes itself by inhabiting both anxious and avoidant tendencies and the presence of dissociation. Generally speaking, disorganized individuals tend to be predictably unpredictable. One minute they are desirous of love and affection, and the next they are terribly afraid of it. The highs and the lows, these folks feel them with such a depth and poignancy, it is hard to know what steady ground looks like. They may view their partners as a place of safety and comfort one moment, but then treat them like a villainous threat the next. Due to the higher levels of contrast or conflict in their romantic experiences, I consider individuals with this attachment style to be spice of lifers, because it is the contrast of life that forces us to expand and grow, which inspires others to grow alongside us. Now, because the spice of lifer may not have been able to change their parents into loving caretakers, they may respond to a familiar type of emotional unavailability in their romantic partners. For example, after being single for a while, Sandy got back into the dating game and managed to meet someone special. At first, they got along really well. Great conversation, good sexual chemistry, easy laughs, and good times galore. But unfortunately, it only lasted so long. Although Sandy has a deep yearning for love and affection, she also has a war going on inside of her when it comes to intimate relationships. On the one hand, she struggles with a throat-closing fear of being rejected and abandoned. On the other hand, she is terrified of being over-controlled or invaded upon. As the intimacy deepens, she starts to distrust and doubt her partner's affections. Jealousy takes over and she finds herself sneaking into their phone or obsessively checking their social media for signs of infidelity. Before she can stop herself, she's picking fights and testing the limits of her partner's affection. She's sick of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and she's convinced that it is going to. So she starts to wonder why they love her anyway. And if they really do love her, well then there must be something wrong with them. She thinks to herself, might as well leave them before they can leave me. I can't remember what I liked about them so much anyway. And so Sandy's partner feels confused and frustrated by her moodiness and accuses her of being too intense. Her partner feels backed into a corner and winds up doing the very things that Sandy has accused them of doing just to spite her. Eventually, one or the other winds up dishing out an ultimatum and the relationship ends. But then Sandy feels like she let her fears get in the way and now she's ruined a good thing. Maybe she was too hard on her partner. She starts to think, what have I done? After a few drinks one Saturday night, she texts her ex, hey, miss you, at 2 a.m. And they reply, me too, come over. And it starts all over again. But how did they get that way? So next, let's talk about the origins of disorganized attachment. Generally speaking, attachment styles reflect an activation of the nervous system's fight, flight, or freeze survival mechanisms. Anxious folks tend to fight for their relationships by staying longer than they should and clinging to what they think they cannot live without to the point of damaging self-sacrifice and personal abandonment. Avoidant folks tend to fly away from the relationship by avoiding commitment or intimacy because they believe it preserves their autonomy and their emotional freedom to the point of emotional dismissal, isolation, and deprivation. Now, secure folks may lean more towards anxious or avoidant coping strategies while under stress, but their nervous systems return to equilibrium a lot faster, and they don't cling to extreme punitive, self-recriminating assumptions when things go wrong in their lives, or make sweeping assumptions about the lack of love's availability in the world in general. Relationships are very important, but they're not such a highly charged and conflictual subject in their experience, and they usually have satisfactory relationships. Now, disorganized folks can experience both the pressure to stay and to abandon ship at the same time, because in their upbringing, their closest caregivers were both a source of comfort and a source of threat. Therefore, they have a lot of confusion around love and bonding as being associated with a degree of drama and trauma reenactments that stimulate adrenaline highs in their nervous system and brain chemistry. In other words, they come to associate love with pain, and they may inadvertently seek out or recreate situations that lead to painful and dramatic conflicts in love in order to feel connected. And so while many anxious folks display avoidant tendencies sometimes, and many avoidant folks display anxious tendencies sometimes, disorganized folks experience both impulses in the extreme, which can lead to short-circuiting the nervous system, resulting in a severe deactivation and dissociative shutdown. For the spice of lifer, this may look and feel like your amorous feelings turning off suddenly and inexplicably, like flipping a switch. Or you may still love the person, but now you have no sexual interest once a commitment is put in place, for example. Now, of course, there is a normal degree of dissociation like daydreaming, fantasizing, thinking about your next vacation while your boss is reaming you out, or getting lost in a project and losing track of time. But pathological dissociation is different. It seems to build on normative dissociation and then fragment our ability to have a continuity of consciousness or self-awareness. This can leave you with a sense of depersonalization, derealization, dissociative amnesia, out-of-body experiences, emotional numbness, remembering and retelling memories or stories with narrative discrepancies, as well as altered time perception. This can wreak havoc on a person's internal sense of coherence, which is an organized sense of internal self and identity. Now, the presence of dissociation usually indicates a history of big T traumas or little t traumas, including developmental trauma. Big T traumas are more incidental and obvious. Little t traumas are harder to identify and usually have a cumulative effect. Typically, these traumas are the result of unhealthy emotional communications which are insidious and difficult to spot because they are woven into almost every common communication shared between family members, friends, coworkers, and even lovers. To learn more about the impact of trauma on attachment styles, explicitly disorganized attachment style, I encourage you to watch my video, Developmental Trauma, The Normal BS. You might also like my video, Healing Attachment Wounds, Cliff Notes on Attachment Theory and Trauma. So let's look specifically at some of the characteristics of a disorganized attachment style. It's important to realize that an avoidant person or an anxious person might lead in the opposing direction from time to time as well. But a spice of lifer experiences this in the extreme, which makes their presentation qualitatively different. If you are anxious or avoidant, you might relate to the spice of lifer on many levels, but they will have a nuanced experience of their attachment style. For example, spice of lifers tend to behave in frightened or frightening ways in moments of distress. They demonstrate unpredictable, confusing, or erratic behavior, sometimes with no apparent trigger. They often can't make sense of their experiences. If they have suffered abuse, they may offer unusual explanations or justifications for their abuser's behavior. When they are asked to convey details of their relationships, their stories tend to be fragmented, and they have difficulty expressing themselves clearly or directly. They struggle to self-soothe and have difficulty allowing others to help them co-regulate their emotions. It may be difficult for them to open up to others or to seek out help. They tend to view the world as an unsafe place, and they have pessimistic beliefs about the possibilities for love in it. In a conflict, they tend to vilify their partners and assume their partners have a malicious intention towards them, which might look like acting out in various ways, including sexual infidelity, ending a relationship on a whim, or picking up an addiction, for example. They tend to overgeneralize minor issues, assuming even the smallest disagreement is a sign that the entire relationship is flawed and never going to work. They do not understand boundaries, and they tend to view an assertion of personal boundaries as a criticism or a threat to relationship security. And so they may treat their partners with hostility or emotional withdrawal if a partner attempts to assert their boundaries. But the hardest thing for a spice of lifer is that they usually attract other partners with insecure attachment styles. And so each partner is constantly feeling triggered because for the spice of lifer, their attachment figures are considered both a source of comfort and a source of threat. It feels as if there is no way to really relax into the relationship or regard any conflict as an opportunity for deepening intimacy. Because no healthy relationship can be sustained like this for very long without psychotherapy or actively retraining the nervous system. For the spice of lifer, it proves their deepest fear, which is that they are inherently helpless and unworthy, and relationships are really just a game of power dynamics. You either control or be controlled. Given all of that, they still have many tremendous strengths which they can bring to a relationship. Now, at this time, I would like to pause and ask, does any of this sound like you? Do you recognize any of these beliefs within yourself or within a partner? Please comment below and let me know. And also be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications so you can watch more content like this. So let's take a look at how spice of lifers struggle in relationship and how they might apply their strengths to improve them. Disorganized attachment can cause some issues in dating because of the emotional fast cycling between anxiously yearning to be in a relationship and then a severe dismissal or avoidance of the loving feelings it stimulates. So I also think it is important to acknowledge that if you are a spice of lifer, you are probably capable of great creativity, empathy, passion, excitement, ferocity, and mysterious emotional depths, all of which are truly a dazzling gift for your partner. For example, individuals with a disorganized attachment may have a depth of emotion and passion that is hard to contain, and so creativity is something that can appeal to them even if they may not describe themselves as artistic. They really understand poetry. They really feel the music. You can get lost in a painting, a book, or a movie, understanding the layers of meaning that may fly above everybody else's head. As a spice of lifer, you may also be drawn to exciting or expressive forms of art, and some spice of lifers have the potential to really lose themselves in sex, for example. Now, this can bring a lot of passion, excitement, and fire to a relationship. You also tend to be empathic and can read a room like nobody's business, which means you can be very charismatic and charming. Although inside there may be an emotional chaos, paradoxically, you are extremely adept at gazing deep down into another person's soul and seeing their truth. This means you know what your partner is feeling without them having to say it, and that grants you access to a wide emotional range. Now, this can feel like an addictive drug to your partners, particularly to anxious open hearts who often desperately seek validation through being seen and understood. And also for the avoidant Rolling Stone who struggles with a burning and suppressed desire to feel as deeply as you do. Now, if you choose, this superpower can allow you to show genuine and authentic compassion for another person, and this is typically what draws people in. A tendency towards rumination, overanalysis, and hypervigilance can also make you a tremendous strategist, activist, and mobilizer. You are most likely to be the one questioning authority and putting an end to oppressive regimes on both a macro and micro level. If you can harness that kind of power to support your partner, they could not ask for a better defender or advocate when they are feeling down. Now, because you are a survivor, you're also well aware of the dark side of humanity, and therefore you are less likely to be surprised or blindsided by it. You're also nobody's fool and can see through anybody's saccharine sweet facade. no matter how nice they might pretend to be. That means that you have tremendous resourcefulness and insights to offer your partner when they have a tough decision to make and need help in sussing out the truth of a situation. And so, as you can see, the Spice of Lifer has quite a lot to offer. I hope now you realize that you have all of this going for you. So let's transition into talking more about how you can begin to heal disorganized attachment. Healing disorganized attachment, like anything else, is threefold. The treatment must address mind, body, and spirit. On the level of the mind, we must reframe negative beliefs about the self and the world in order to open up to possibilities in life, so as to avoid trauma reenactments through what's called projected introjects. In other words, we stop unconsciously recreating painful scenarios because it's just what feels familiar. On the level of the body, we must work with loosening and integrating energy that has constellated around negative limiting beliefs and patterns of energetic armoring and constriction in the nervous system and limbic brain. This requires experiential interventions. And in my practice, I use creative arts interventions, which tap into your creative life force energy. This is vital to accessing the real you and healing a fundamental self wound. It also promotes bilateral integration of the brain and creates new sensorial experiences that carve healthier synaptic grooves in your brain while stimulating the good feeling and socially active vagus nerve. Sitting in a room talking for an hour a week is not going to cut it. It doesn't matter how good the therapeutic rapport might be. Working with the mind and body for the Spice of Lifer requires psychoeducation and emotional skill building that will allow you to develop a more robust emotional vocabulary. A bigger vocabulary allows you to name and claim and organize all those big energetic and emotional states that you are capable of. That means you finally understand what your needs and your boundaries are, and you can clearly articulate them. This reduces your anxiety internally, but also in relationships, because you can finally let your partner know what's really going on with you, and they can try to meet those needs effectively. It also reduces the likelihood of getting triggered in a stressful situation. Now, on the level of spirit, we must strive for post-traumatic growth, which means adopting an entirely new belief system and identity that promotes increased organization, mental and emotional coherence, and a deeper experience of personal meaning and connection to the collective consciousness. This is also supported by accessing creative life force energy, which is an integrative and holistic influence in both your inner and outer worlds. In other words, you learn how to orient yourself in relationship to your own inner wisdom and spiritual compass, rather than obsessively preoccupying yourself with attempting to control everyone and everything outside of yourself in order to avoid an uncomfortable feeling. And so working with self parts, especially for the Spice of Lifer, such as with the wounded inner child or the inner critic, is particularly effective in accomplishing this goal. It also blends well with creative arts approaches. You learn to view your emotions as energy moving through your body, offering you important information about your proximity to your own spirit. Once you learn to act on that information more objectively, life satisfaction improves exponentially. So let's offer a brief summary of what we have learned today. Individuals with a disorganized attachment, whom I like to call Spice of Lifers, tend to be predictably unpredictable because they experience both anxious and avoidant tendencies, which leads to severe deactivation and dissociative shutdown. This is typically due to the presence of incidental or chronic trauma in their upbringing and can result in a quick and unexplained change of heart and or sabotaging behaviors in relationships. While this can negatively affect your experience of dating, there are also tremendous strengths that the Spice of Lifer can utilize to improve their love life, including creativity, empathy, charisma, mindfulness, advocacy, and profound insight. Healing disorganized attachment includes addressing the mind, body, and spirit with psychoeducation, emotional skill building, and facilitating transcendent experiences, which allow them to access their own inner compass and connection to the collective consciousness. Now, this might sound like a monumental task, but it is not impossible, and it doesn't have to be a painful treasure hunt into the past. If you'd like to learn more about how I use guided visualization and creative arts interventions to facilitate healing with the MacWilliam method, be sure to check out my video, Art Therapy Techniques, Tools for Secure Attachment. And lastly, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I read all comments and feedback when considering new video content. And if you're not sure what your attachment style may be, make sure you check out the link in the caption of this video. It will take you to an easy 4-question quiz that will help you determine your attachment style. Thank you and have a great week.